All right. Welcome to the patron-only video call. And this is public as well, so people on YouTube, you can watch and listen. All right. Welcome to the patron-only video call. Well, I need to turn off my sound. This is public as well, so people on... There we go. A little bit of echo. All right. So we got Cam. Cam's a pretty amazing artist, actually. Welcome, Kim. And then we got Joshua. I didn't mean to say that, like, actually, he's a good artist. No, you are a very good artist. So we got Joshua here, too. He's a regular, usually just listening in. So what we were talking about, Joshua, was experiments and ideas with, trying to grow your patron fan base or just get more eyes on your stuff. And what I'm going to do in the next couple months, actually, that I've been working on a lot is I'm going to give away a free comic. And you're saying it's kind of like sweepstakes. And yes, it's kind of like that. I'm thinking of it more like a mini Kickstarter. And it will be a little 22-page comic. It's black and white that I will actually, I have it kind of, here's the cover. So, and I got a bunch of it drawn. It's pretty much inked. I just need to finish the gray tones, and then I'll print it, do a physical printing, and kind of launch it as if it's a mini Kickstarter. So it'd be like a month-long period where I'll send it to my mailing list. Say, hey, become a Kickstarter at a certain amount or higher. I assume this book and any book as well. So it kind of has all those perks that Kickstarter generates with the time restraints and getting a physical thing sent, but it's to just try to get more people to pull that trigger and become patrons. And because there's a lot of people, I know for myself, there's a lot of people that I like and I admire and I like their work, but there's got to be an incentive for me to actually think, oh yeah, of course I want to do that. Of course, yeah, I want to support you, So because I'm forgetful, and if things are out of sight, they're out of mind, and so I know that's how most people on the internet operate. So anyway, so that's kind of one strategy I'm going to work on this, hopefully within a month or so. I should finish the actual whole comic today. That's my goal. And then we'll see where it goes. And I'm really curious how it'll work. I've heard from other people that this is the way to grow your patron fan base really fast. And I have to say I'm a little skeptical, but I've tried a lot of other things, and I think this might work. So anyway, I'm excited to try it.
Kind of makes me think of the way public radio and television works. They'll often do like a fundraiser time or a pledge drive where they're getting people to give them monthly support.
Exactly. And the guy who, well, actually, who's the girl? The wife of Jack Conte. They're in that band Pamplemousse. She wrote an article about this whole concept when she did it, and I guess her patron fan base grew like crazy, like triple within a couple weeks. And she, made an album for the people who became patrons, and that was the way to get it. And then they would have their name printed in the album cover and all that stuff. And then another guy who I was on a podcast with, the podcast, I think it's called One Fantastic Week. I think that's what it's called. He did it, and he said his patrons tripled too, and he has like over 1,000 patrons now. And so in talking to him, it kind of convinced me to try it, but I didn't have anything to actually give to people because I didn't, I can't make a whole graphic novel just to experiment with. So I decided to do it with this short comic that I've been wanting to work with for a long time. And it just so happens I was teaching a class on making comics, and so I was like, well, I'll kill like 5 birds with one stone. I'll make this comic. It'll be for the class. It'll be also a patron drive type thing as well. And so if all those things wouldn't have lined up that way, I probably wouldn't have put in the time to do it. because it's a lot of work, you know. So, and oh, but anyway, going back to what you were saying, Cam. The guy on One Fantastic Week, he was saying, I suggest every patron artist does this like once a year, because he's like, there's nothing compared to it. So with that said, this is my experiment, and I'm really curious, you know, if it doubles, I'll be like ecstatic, you know. Everyone's, but based on these other people, they're like, it triples. I'm like, I don't know if it's going to do that, but I was skeptical with Kickstarter when it first launched too, and it surprised me, and it was a good thing I did it. So
I remember you were skeptical of Patreon too in the beginning.
yeah.
I remember like, it was very new.
Yeah.
First mentioned, I think you were like dabbling, or I don't know, you were dabbling with it. I think you were like just starting, and I asked you a few questions. You're like, I don't even know if this thing's gonna work, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The week that it launched, actually, I launched a patron page, and no one really knew about it, but it was going to be for making more podcasts, the Making Comics podcasts. It was right around the time that I was losing steam on that, and I was trying to figure out a way to kind of keep it going. And then I never did anything with it, and I actually emailed them. There was no way to cancel your account, so I emailed them. I was like, sorry guys, I can't do this. It was like a month in. And so and then after I thought about it and watched other people do it for a while, that's when I launched the Citra campaign. And yeah, it was a completely different approach and strategy than what I was originally thinking, but it worked really well, especially when you're doing it on the side of like a full-time project. And when I first launched it, you know, it was like, I'll try to post an update once a month, and you know, it did pretty good, and it kept growing, and it grew until I got on with Webtoons. It kind of kept growing, and then stopped. But now that I'm off of Webtoons, it started growing again, which is odd, you know. I don't know if it's just because I haven't given it that much time. When I'm working with Webtoons, it's like getting that thing delivered is like the only thing on my mind, and it's like all consuming. And so I didn't really have much time to like think about Patreon. And so I think that was a big part of it, you know. But now that I'm not on Webtoons anymore, I have a lot of time to think and stress. No, it's actually been incredibly unstressful this year, even though I would think it would be very stressful not having that consistent paycheck. So that's good. All right, guys.
Did you find you were posting less on Patreon when you were working with Webtoons?
Yeah, I did post less, and it was more because, yeah, it was like the second. No, actually, now that I think about it, I posted more, but it was really kind of like this, the last thing on my mind. So I think it came across as like, let's just, I have to get this done, and to you guys, there you go, you know, because what happened was another difference was once I started putting stuff on Webtoons, it meant every week I had to get a massive amount of stuff done. And so that became a problem with Patreon, because it's like I was on a per thing type schedule. So every time I post something, you know, I'd get money. And suddenly I was making, you know, 10, 20 pages a week in some cases. And so I was like, okay, do I combine this all and give it as a post once a week, or do I do once a month and it's like you know, two entire comics worth of content once a month? And when it would get to the end of the month, I just wouldn't feel like putting together this massive entire archive of posts. And so I tried it a couple different ways, and finally I settled on, I'll just post it. I'll try to post something every Friday with everything I worked on that week. But even that was a pretty big task of assembling all the stuff I'd worked on, because it was a lot of bits and pieces, you know. It was coloring some of these pages and writing some of these and sketches for some of these, and you know. and really converting it to the Webtoons format. I didn't want to give that to the patrons because that's kind of what Webtoons paid for, when to have me as a featured artist. So I didn't want to do it to mess with Webtoons, but I also wanted to give something special to the patrons, and so I gave them the actual the actual pages in the spread layout, which is the way I intended the book to be, So it was kind of like you saw a little bit more behind the curtain. At first, I would try to do like sketches and thumbnails and finished art, but that just became way too much work to assemble every week. And so it was kind of that. It was kind of like some people were like, it's just too much content. You're just generating too much stuff. It felt like it was just like the last thing on my mind. I was just trying to feed this thing. And so there wasn't a lot of like community. I guess it didn't feel like community. It was more just like, here you go. Oh, bye. You know what I'm saying? And I think that hurt it a little bit. So it was a combination of things. And also it probably felt like I didn't need the patron money because I was a featured artist on Webtoons and they're paying me, So, but I did need it, So it's kind of hard to play that game nicely, I guess, because it is a game,
Mm-hmm.
So, and now, well, hey, Young.
Hey there.
So now this year, since I'm not focusing on necessarily like one comic, I've tried to switch it to kind of like more of an educational thing. Like here's a demonstration video of my process of something. And here's a lecture I gave of something, I'll try to do one of those type of things every month. And that's the only thing I can kind of really commit to as a monthly patron reward, but it's still random. And of course I want to give away the comic, the physical comic as well. So that'll hopefully be kind of a bigger reward than normal. And that will probably be next month, I'm thinking maybe the month after. And then as soon as I start working on the next big project, I'll probably kind of switch everything back to something that's focused more on the production of the book, the comic actually. And so I don't know what that will look like next year, but it kind of depends too on how patron grows or shrinks. If it grows enough, then there's going to be if it grows enough to support most of my finances, then there would be no reason why I would put some other kind of company first, or publisher. I should just go 100% on creating the content and rewarding the patrons. And then once it's ready to show to the world, I can cross that bridge, whether that's a Kickstarter or putting it out as a webcomic. You know what I'm saying? So next year is really kind of, it's based on a lot of factors, which is kind of how it is this year. And the factors have definitely changed. Can we hear your phone call, Young?
I'm trying to figure out the mute control.
I'm joking.
Oh, there it is.
You guys probably recognize Young. He's in a couple of my YouTube videos by this point. He always helps me out. Well, I can mute you, Young, if you want me to. And
I got it.
You got it? Okay.
I found it.
It doesn't bother me, though. Well, anything you guys want to talk about?
Oh, what's the next big project now that you finished Sifter?
Well, I have, aside from this black and white comic that I'm just now finishing up, I'm also teaching for CGMA, CG Master Academy, and it's an 8-week course, and they want me to teach it 4 times a year. And so that will be kind of like a side project. And so you probably know about that. And I'm hoping that it can pay pretty good and not take up a whole lot of time once I get the videos all finished. Anyway, I'm still working on the videos. They should be done in about a week or two now. And so there's that. And then obviously this black and white comic that I'm going to send to patrons and try to do that. I'm going to then steer my focus to just getting Cithra 4 to print. So I still need to draw the cover. I've done a couple little random things with it, but there's still quite a bit of work assembling it and then getting it to the printer so that I can hit those deadlines. And then once that's off to the printer, I'm actually thinking now I need to focus on cognitive drawing, which is another kind of, it's big, but it's kind of a smaller thing that I've put off to the side for a while. And the reason I'm focusing on that is because I found that there's a lot of interest in it from schools. And actually, this local school here wants to potentially use it as one of their curriculums for next year. And so I still need to meet with them, and they'll kind of be my guinea pigs, you know. And then also homeschoolers, it seems like it could be potentially a big thing with homeschool if I just finish this thing. And so based on how those meetings will go, which they're already looking really, really promising, it'll probably put the fire under my bum to get that first cognitive drawing book completely finished. Now, whether that means it's a printed book or just some sort of curriculum that schools and people can download, I'm not sure. I would like it to be a book, curriculum that you can download and print yourself, as well as an app. And because, you know, with all three of those, it would be able to just, I think it could do really well. So I think I'll focus for a couple months on that once Cithra's kind of being printed, and hopefully get it done before I get all the books back from the printer. And then later on, I've actually been approached by a publisher about my next book, and I haven't, you know, all I've pitched to people is kind of a log line of what it would be about. And so far, there's Webtoons is interested in it, which I don't really want to do it with Webtoons if I don't have to, because I like that platform and the reach of the platform, but I don't want to do it the same way I did Cithra. It was just too stressful and intense, the schedule. So if I can figure out how to fund a project outside of Webtoons and then take it to Webtoons to put it out weekly after it's mostly finished, that would be one thing I would like to do. I'd love that, but I don't think that would be the case. So I am still considering like alternatives, like publishing companies and whatever. And so there is another publisher that I've had a phone call with them for an hour and a half a couple of weeks ago, and it was really neat because they were really we were really on the same page as far as our goals and why we're creating work. And so and they're connected with a lot of good people, and I was just really impressed with them. And so I don't want to say who it is or anything because it's just way too early, but there's a potential really good partnership, I guess you could say, maybe if I get the synopsis written and presented to them and they like it as much as some of my other work, I think there's a good potential for getting the funding to be able to create the next book and have it circulate through the industry, and then they would try to do movie rights and all that whatever stuff. I don't know, but it might be a good deal. And so I guess I just I can't talk. I don't want to talk about what the deal is or what the story is yet because it's just too early, you know. I'm still kind of like developing it. I have a lot of the ideas kind of written out, and I have a nice kind of idea for it. I think it might be like a trilogy of books, And hopefully they would be a little bit more satisfying once you complete the first book. It would actually be kind of self-contained, and then you could read the next book and it would be kind of self-contained, but it would be a continuation of the same story. Unlike my books so far, which are like, here's the introduction, and too bad, now you got to wait to see how it ends. I don't want to do that anymore to people. So that was a long answer. Sorry.
Oh, it's perfect. An app. I came across like a website platform called like Bubble.is, and allows you to create your own social networking or applications without the knowledge of code. It's kind of like the drag and drop websites, but a little more advanced. So maybe that's something you can kind of look into, maybe with the team, and then maybe that could be a potential avenue for you to create your app a little easier.
Yeah.
There's people, when I was researching, said they were able to make clone copies of Twitter and Instagram within like 2 days or a week at max, versus like the longer times it takes to do that stuff, having to have the knowledge of code.
Yeah.
So I haven't experimented with it too much yet, but that was like my plan when I came across it. But like, I want to make I have some apps and social media platforms for like different things I'm involved with that I think might be useful. So with my brothers or a few other people, I'm gonna experiment with it. But that might be something to look into.
What's it called? What's the web address?
Bubble.is.
Global.is?
Bubble.is. Like
Bubble.is.
Bubble?
Okay. Bubble.
Yeah, it's a funny name.
Bubble.is. I better write that. Well, I'll look at the recording later and get it. I actually have, that's a good idea. If I would have to think about it and actually look at it to see if it's something that I would be comfortable with trying to do, because the more stuff you try to learn, the more you realize there's a time investment to ramp up to getting anything done and learning things, and especially with new software and everything. So I'm always hesitant to like jump in and try to like learn something so that I can make those next steps, but sometimes it's necessary. But one of the things with that whole app version is that I've been toying with is a friend of mine. I've been in contact ever since the middle of Remind, I think. He's been showing me like programming or websites or apps that he's been developing over the years that are all about drawing. And so he already has this whole understanding of how to build apps where you can actually draw with pressure sensitivity through a website, and some apps that have already been decently successful with drawing. And he was even thinking of making a drawing type app or curriculum, but he didn't have the curriculum. And so I emailed him and was like, hey, would you be interested in this? And he was. And so we haven't really made any official headway on anything yet, but it's mostly my fault, because I need to just get into the mindset of working on cognitive drawing again, because once I'm immersed in it, I'll just be like bugging people around me to, hey, how do we get this thing going now? So but right now my brain's been scattered in too many other little things. So so I'm saying that there is a connection that I'm really hopeful that can form a partnership to create the actual app version, which I think could be really, really neat, because it would solve an awful lot of the problems that the course has if it's just on paper. Like having to cover up things and look at it for only a couple seconds, and allowing you to pick what kind of reference you want instead of just the one reference I provide. So there would be a lot of like benefits to having it as an app. And then not only that, but students, especially if it's through schools, could sign in and see their progress, and then there could even be memberships and stuff like that for stuff. So I don't even know how any of that would work, but I see it potentially being a huge thing if it goes, if all the pieces fall into place, I guess. It's not like I have a lot of experience with building apps, and but I've tested this cognitive drawing thing enough, and I keep hearing enough testimonials from people just regularly about how they love it and how it really has helped their drawing. And so I'm pretty sure if I can just get it done and get versions of it, and even like a male and a female, or different styles, and if I could just get some of that stuff out there, I'm pretty sure it would be really easy to push it, to market it. And so anyway, I really, really want to get that kind of at a good place before I start my next book. Because once I start the next big book, everything else is thrown to the side. And as hopeful as I may be that I can work on little things here and there, it just doesn't happen. I've learned that I can't juggle too many things if they're all my own project at the exact same time. Divide up my time throughout the day to work on different things. I can't do it. I could do it at like a studio, if I was hired to work on multiple things. But when it's my own personal projects, I just get too invested and too emotionally into it. And then it's hard to divide up that time. Once you're moving down the tracks on something really fast, it's hard to just be, okay, now let's work on this. For me, it is. I look at people like Doug TenNapel, and every time we're on a live stream together, he's doing something else. And Jake Parker is another example of someone who seems like he's very good at scattered projects. But it's really hard for my brain to work that way. And I don't think I'm smart enough. Who's this? I see a new person, L. Who's L? Can you talk? Do you have a microphone? We may never know. Welcome, L. You're welcome to chime in whenever you want, though. All right, guys, help me make this not boring.
So can you give us a brief, what's the word, synopsis of what your mini or your short comic is about?
Yeah. Let's see if I can. Well, I don't know if I can give you a synopsis. Let me show you my
tagline. A teaser.
Okay, well, I was going to show you my screen and try to.
Hey, Jason, I got to run to a meeting, so good seeing you.
You too, Young. Thanks for swinging by.
Yep.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, let me show you guys my screen. Sorry, 1 second. Screen share. The button's not working. Okay, now it's working. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
All right, so I won't show you the whole thing, just so that there's still some mystery in it. But I wrote it about 2003, and it was like when I was like in the middle of the grind and in like not office work. It was still creative, but I just felt like I was chained to this career of doing everything that everyone else wanted me to do creatively. And so all my own creative ideas were just thrown to the side, So I made this pitch when I was trying to do it as an animation for a commercial for Zune, the Microsoft, iPod. And we actually did a different one, and it turned out really great. But this is one of the pitches that I pitched to them, to the studio that I was working with. And it's basically this guy, so this is double page spreads right here. The cover is this creepy looking guy. And it starts out with this bird in this cage tweeting, and the tweets turn into this alarm clock We'll zoom in real close. Whoa. The tweets turn into an alarm clock, and he wakes up and he uncuffs his hand from the bedpost. He's, for whatever reason, he locks his hand up at night. Goes into work, and he's kind of pathetic and alone, and he has this kind of this interest in this girl that works across from him, and gets piled on a lot of work that night. Goes late into the night, ends up going home, falling asleep without cuffing his hand up again. And now he has this, now there's this dream of a bird flying freely. And this isn't finished, and you can't see all the effects that I'll put onto this page. But he wakes up and he realizes that he hadn't cuffed his hand up, and there's scribbles all over his walls and all over his dressers. And they're self-criticizing type words and whatever things. And he's really frustrated, and he runs and he puts on his clothes and he washes his body off because he has words written on himself, cleans himself up and goes to work, hoping, that he didn't miss anything. Gets to work late, and he gets into the office, drops some papers, and he sees this girl's legs again, the girl that he kind of likes. He sees her, and he kind of spaces out, has a little daydream, and he had scribbled onto the floor with this pencil while he was daydreaming. And then anyway, he keeps working late into the night. He falls asleep at the office, and his hand obviously grabs a pen here, and then this double page spread of a bird being very happy. He wakes up and he sees these markings all over his hand, but there's nothing in the office and where he has scribbled on. And so so I'll stop there. But so that's kind of where we're at. I don't know. I don't know if that's definitely not a pitch. It's definitely not a log line either. But
you got me intrigued though.
Yeah, hopefully it's enough to make it interesting. And it's all wordless too. So I wanted to kind of experiment with the maximum amount of panels I could put into a page, and telling the story without any words, even though it's very kind of complicated. And I think it turned out good. So, and it's only 20 pages, 22 if you include the cover, and well, actually 21 pages, 22 with the cover. And yeah, it's just something, I've been holding on to it for a long time, thinking someday I got to do that, because I don't want to not do it, but it's just hard to put in the time to finish something big like that. So anyway, so that's that. And I'll probably make a little YouTube video about it, kind of pitching it, pitching it and my patron at the same time. So.
How is it working again when you have the fundraiser or the sweepstakes thing you get going on, where for all the new patrons that jump up to a certain level, you're gonna mail them that book or something?
Yeah, so now I have it so that if you become a patron, you have to put in your mailing address, and before you didn't. And so there's a lot of $1 patrons I have that I probably won't be able to get it to them, because most patrons are the silent majority. They want to support, but they don't really pay attention to what's going on, which is exactly how I am with people I follow. And so the goal is, though, to get new patrons to come in, and I'm not sure if it's going to be you can choose any tier, whether it's $1 or $5 or up, or if I'm going to have it be a certain amount. $5 and up. $5 and up would definitely cover the printing cost and most of the shipping, but I don't know if I want to make it so that it's only $5, because I as long as I can afford it, I would want to just get people on board, because a majority of those people will stay on board, So it'd be something like that, where come on board, and then I'll have a questionnaire saying, what name do you want printed in the book, and do you want a physical copy of this book? And then everyone who says yes and provides a name, I'll put their name into the credits. And everyone who says yes and wants it shipped to them, I'll send them a copy. And because I'm doing it black and white, I think the price is, I wrote it down. It's going to be around $1.50 to print. It'll probably be about $1.50 for the postage, and then I'm assuming probably another 50 cents for an envelope. You know, so that's kind of what we're looking at as far as the price. And you know, if so, it won't break the bank if even if I only say it, anybody who pledges $1 or up, it won't break the bank, even though it's not paying for the whole thing. So anyway, I don't know what that'll be yet, but that's kind of the idea. I kind of want to talk to the guy that convinced me to do it again, and tell him my strategy and tell him if he thinks it's a good or bad idea, or how to, you know, hone it. Because I know I need to think about it more.
So I noticed you were working in Clip Studio. Are you enjoying that?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Clip Studio is just really nice. I really like it a lot now. I can't draw on Photoshop anymore. I mean, I can, but I don't want to, I guess, you know. Clip Studio is just really nice.
Are you doing the tones in there as well?
I did. This was kind of my experiment with coloring. Even that cover was all colored in Clip Studio. And it was kind of just really about me trying to learn it and make sure I can do it and that I'm confident with it. Because it's, you know, it's different. There's some things that don't function exactly the same way as Photoshop. And I can't quite figure out some of the effects, how to make them look the same as in Photoshop. So if I were to color a full book, I would still choose Photoshop. But as far as gray tones go, I don't have any problems with Clip Studio. So I don't know. My next book, my next big book, I'm thinking it's going to be mostly gray tone, but with colors thrown in when it needs it, and so that it can kind of have more of a noir or ominous or feel to it. But I don't want to abandon colors, so I'm not really sure what program I'll end up using for that. I just don't know yet. And I might try to have someone help me with the colors too, you know, or not the colors, but the gray values. So we'll see. It's still a little ways off, so I don't need to worry about it too much yet. Anything else, you guys? Got 20 more minutes. There's not a lot of people today.
Like, and like any licensing stuff going on maybe for Sister now that it's complete. Maybe like put I think you had stuff before, like T-shirts. I know you had posters and stuff, but like anything like maybe like another company that might utilize that IP, especially now that it's complete, for some other source of income or marketing promotional thing, keep it alive.
Yeah, you know, the numbers for Citra weren't as incredible as a company would want them to be to actually license something like that. And so, like the numbers on Webtoons were just not even close to what their big projects are on Webtoons, you know. And so, it would be hard. I think it'd be hard to convince a company to actually want to license it, unless it was a company that was wanting me to do all the work, you know, of selling it. You know, obviously there's always like toy companies that approach you and say, hey, you know, let's print 1,000 plushies in China, and then you pay for them and then you sell them, you know, and it's like, woohoo, that's not something I want to do, you know. So because it would be a lot of work. And my business is not plushies. So, I wouldn't be able to sell them. I just wouldn't. I could sell 50 of them, but not 1,000. And so, but there has been, multiple people that are, like producers in LA or something that are like buying copies of it and like, communicating with me about wanting to pitch it around and stuff. But I'm not actively like participating in much of that. And I really want to almost wait until the books are finished too, really, because in my mind, the books are really the thing that it's really the way I wanted to present the project to people. And I think once the books are all finished and physical, it would be nice to be able to send that around to either agents, like certain reputable certain good agents and or agents that I think fit with the property and see what happens with it, and it's kind of how this relationship with this publishing company happened too. People were pitching my projects to other places and asking around, do you know anyone who has something like this or that? And my books were given to somebody. And so it started this conversation. And if that works out, then it could be a nice licensing deal, and it could lead to other licensing deals. But I always hesitate to really bank on any of that stuff, because it's all just, to me, it's all icing on the cake. If any of that happens, it would be great, but I can't support myself with it regularly. And so my goals are always like, what can I do to support my business every month at a comfortable pace, and so, I know I could put a lot of energy into that side of it, but I know a lot of people, and I've put energy in the past into that side of it. And I know a lot of people who put a lot of energy and hope into that side of it. And it just seems like it's a very, it's just really hard. It's a hard way to go about it, in my opinion. And if things like Patreon or Kickstarter or a publishing company can just pay me to make the work and get it out there and keep growing the intellectual property and growing the passive income, then to where I can pay my bills, then I'm kind of like, I'm happy with it, because I'm moving forward. It's still moving forward, and it's taking care of things right now. And it's it's still retaining all these things for the future. Right. So to answer that question and sorry for going on forever, but it's just, it's just not my focus, and I definitely don't want to be the merchandise guy who makes merch and tries to push it, because, like going to trade shows or conventions, it's just not my thing. I've realized the more I do it, the more I don't want to do it. I don't like dragging all my stuff someplace, selling it and pitching it over and over and over again. There's other things about those shows that I love, like connecting with the fans and meeting other artists and stuff. That's irreplaceable, that conventions do, and you can't do it other places. Even online, you can communicate with people online, like, but like my relationship with Young, the guy who was here, it's so much deeper because we connected at conventions and now we're friends in person. And every time I go to a convention, we always hang out, so it's just, it's like that. And even the connections with this publisher that I'm interested in, the person that connected those dots was someone I met at a convention who had this other big company. And so those kind of things I don't think would have happened without conventions. So they're valuable in that way, but they're not valuable for me with my business model and my strategy of just like making random things to try to sell. So that really went off on a tangent that you weren't expecting, probably. I see questions in the chat, but I don't. Well, I shouldn't address too much. Oh, actually, there was a question from in Patreon. Since this is a patron call, I need to answer it. Let's see. Let me find it. What's specifically black and white? Can you talk a little bit about your next book being potentially black and white? He says. Why specifically black and white? Is it to give a certain look, or for time considerations? And I think the answer to that is it's kind of both. I've realized with coloring a comic, like Sithra and Remind, that that coloring is beautiful, but and it adds a lot to the book, but it takes a lot of time. And the thing I like the most about color is the lighting. And I know I can create the same kind of lighting with a black and white book, you know, if it's in gray value. Like the pages you saw, I don't think I'm doing that at all. But I really like that. I really love doing lighting and like intense light and glows and all that stuff. And so that's why I want to do it black and white, so that it's more focused on the lighting. But then I still want to tiptoe into color when I want to, when it needs it. And so, but I don't want to get into this whole painted, like everything's really overly painted anymore, because that's not what attracted me to color in the first place. The color that always attracted me to it was really simple colors that were really striking, you know, with intense mood and lighting and stuff. And so I'm trying to force myself into a more simplified process, and to get back to the thing that I enjoyed the most about the color, which was the lighting. And then there's also reasons for black and white, because it's kind of a lot darker of a story. It's kind of more in the it's not horror, but I guess you could say it tiptoes back and forth between horror. But it's not. I mean, I don't know. It'll become a little more clear when you know what it's about. Sorry. Hey, Derek, welcome. Have you been here for a while?
I got here about, I don't even think 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah, sorry. Better late than never, I guess.
Yeah, good. So anyway, answered that question. That was from HR Hinton, patron. And just so the public knows, if you guys want to participate in these video calls, then become a patron. $5 and up, you get access to these video calls. So there you go. Housekeeping, right? So anything else you guys want to talk about? Should we change subjects? We don't have to, but.
So you talked about conventions. Are you ever going to come down to Salt Lake Comic-Con?
I don't know. You know, it's so close. I've been really borderline going all the time, but I've heard some good and bad things about it. And at the end of the day, I don't really financially, conventions aren't really worth it. I've learned, like, I sell a lot of books, you know, I sell a lot, but it means I have to buy a nice big booth, and then I'm lugging a lot of big heavy boxes there and setting up, and usually I have to have an assistant, and I try to pay them when I can, and then it's usually a lot of time prep, and then after I come back to deal with stuff and get back into the swing to where I'm working again. So especially for these bigger, longer shows, it really makes it difficult to make it worth it financially. Like Emerald City Comic Con, the last one I just went to, I actually didn't make my money back that I spent going there, which is kind of surprising for Emerald City, because it's always been a really good show. But even the good shows, you know, it's not like I made made it worth the time. Really, it's more worth it in the connections and stuff. So I would never accept that as a job if I was only getting paid what conventions pay me, if that makes sense. So I'm really hesitant to like book any more shows. I've actually decided to kind of take a break from conventions for maybe a year. There's even one locally here that, it's later on this year that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I even want to do it, even though it's local. There's a lot of other reasons for the local one too. It's, reasons that I won't go into online, but I don't know if it's going to be worth it at all for me, So in other words, the things that are really worth it for me, like from a convention standpoint, is like if a convention contacts me and says, hey, we want to pay you to come out and give you a spot. That's happened before, and those are worth it because then you make profit and you don't have to spend all that money on going and hotels and food and blah, blah, blah. And if they pay you to be a speaker, that's great too, And so I'm more interested in really small conventions that don't take more than a couple days, that pay me to come out and give me a spot, maybe pay me to have a presentation, and then it's just all profit. And it's totally worth my time, and I'm connecting with fans. But if it's not that, then it's really hard for me to justify it anymore. The convention bubble has just gotten really big. And so a lot of these conventions, they're focused on something else. And I don't see why I need to be the one who sacrifices so that the convention can be successful, because that's kind of what it is. It feels like it's always a sacrifice for me to go to a convention. And so, so that's kind of the stipulations I have now with making a decision to go to a show. And there's some coming up that that I've agreed to go to, and that they would provide that. I won't announce them yet because nothing's locked in stone yet. And even like a comic shop. There's a comic shop in Grants Pass, Oregon that placed a huge order for books. And it just was amazing, like the amount of books they ordered directly from me. And then they were like, when Sister 4 comes out, would you come down and do a signing? And I'm like, you got to make it worth it for me. They're like, okay, well, we'll pay for everything. We will, then you can sell books and make money from that. And then we'll pay for the hotels, and you can even have a mini vacation. You can bring your wife, and we'll have a little tour, the little touristy things. We'll let you do that for a day too, and we'll pay for it. And I'm like, sold, that's worth it. But unless it's something like that, it's really hard to like bend over backwards to make these things worth it, like shows and conventions. So with all that said, I'd love to go to Salt Lake City, but they got to make it worth it. Like if they reach out to me or something. And
yeah, it was a purely selfish question.
Yeah, I
don't know if you'd ever be.
My approach with this is it's totally selfish in these conventions I go to. And at this stage, especially if you're trying to make a living at it, you got to be totally, you have to have kind of a high bar to do these things, to make it worth it. And otherwise, you'll never be able to finish anything, and you'll just burn yourself out. So that's why I'm just making it incredibly difficult now to convince me to go do things, because I don't want to hate doing this stuff, And the more stuff like that I do, the more I start hating it, unless it is worth it, And I don't make a lot of money, so it's like for me to lose, 4 or 5 days, and like in the case of Emerald City, it was like 8 days, I think, total, and a lot of money that I had to put into to just go into that show, which was like 4 days, and that was a lot of time to take away from stuff that I had to get done, that I could have been focusing on, that could have resulted in something being finished and more passive income or whatever, or just I could have been working on this mini comic, and gotten half of that done. So Yes, it's selfish, but you gotta be.
Oh, I meant my question was selfish. I just want you to come down to Salt Lake. We'll hang out. You can camp in my backyard.
I would love to come. I'd love to come, but yeah, I don't think it would be worth it at this unless something happens to make it worth it. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know how it compares to other Comic-Cons. It's the only one I've ever done.
It's apparently I mean, people that I've talked to who've done multiple cons, they it's massive in the size. The fan con is, there's the fan one and then there's the comic one. And I've heard that the fan one is not something that a comic artist needs to go to because it's not about comic artists. And which is one of my kind of complaints with the local one. They started out saying it's a Comic Con, and then this year they changed it to the Fan Con. And I'm like, all right, I'm out. So anyway, but I hear, it's so expensive now to get in that it costs like a family of 4, like $1,000 just to get in the doors. And so once a family gets into the convention, they don't have any money left. And so there's very little transactions happening. And so again, it's like, you got to make it worth it for the people that are going there to set up. And you got to make it worth it for the people that are attending, to charge them $1,000 for a family of 4 is, I don't know. It's like pretty prima donna. Kind of. There's just, it's not worth that. I'm sorry. So that's my opinion. I want to make a video on YouTube about this actually, because I have a lot of thoughts on it. Yeah. Derek, do you got anything you want to add or say before we go?
Well, there's about a minute left, and the question will probably take a little longer, so we can
extend it. We can extend it for if you got something you want to say.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking at Patreon, and like I'm trying to do a bunch of research, and I was curious if you have something that's like, don't do this, like in your experience. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I'd say don't. Try not to make things that take a lot of your time monthly. I mean, like this is an example of something that takes time. So every month, I have to schedule this and do it. But there's some things that are worth it. Like this is definitely worth it. This is kind of my finger on the heartbeat of what's going on in Patreon and with my community. So, but if you're like making little things like prints or whatever, and you have a tier where you're doing that, especially if it's not for a lot of money, I would just avoid it completely, because it gets really tiring to wear multiple hats, especially when you jump into Patreon. You probably already have a bunch of hats you're wearing, and then you jump into Patreon, that's automatically another hat. But if you start sending out things monthly, then you're shipping and distributing things, and you're kind of keeping track of addresses, and you're communicating with people, and if things get lost in the mail, it all becomes a hassle. And so, unless that's your focus is like, I want to make prints and sell them to people, then maybe it would work. There's also things like Teespring, where you can create products, and they have it to where you can contact with them, and they will kind of act as your production and distributor of physical products. So if you were to make physical products like mugs or t-shirts or whatever that are given to fans, you can definitely outsource that to something like Teespring, and their quality's pretty good. I've tested them a little bit recently, but it hasn't convinced me to make a tier that is like $50 and you get a t-shirt and a mug every month or something, because the honest truth is most of that money would then go to Teespring. So why am I doing it? It's I don't know if that's worth it to me or the fans. because fans are becoming a patron to support you, but they're mainly supporting something like Teespring then, you know. And then it makes them run out of money faster, and then they have to pull the plug on their support because, you know, it'd just be better to have a PayPal donation button for $50 if you want to do that kind of money. You know what I'm saying? So, so try to avoid those kind of things. The time intensive, or let me ink you a drawing every time a $5 patron comes, let me ink you a drawing, you know, or I'll send you a new print every month, or whatever. It all takes a lot of time, and month after month it starts becoming like a full-time thing, and then you start resenting it. So I think it's fine to do it with like a one-shot thing, like if you rewind this and listen to the first part, I'm talking about this comic that I'm going to physically send to my patrons, but that's more of like an incentive to get new patrons in. It's kind of like fulfilling it like a Kickstarter, and then it's done. And no one signed up for the book before that, but they're still going to be rewarded with it, you know, if they want it. So that'd be my biggest thing, you know. I don't know if there's if I would suggest doing monthly or per project, per thing, and it probably mostly depends on what you're doing. So if your projects are bigger and they take a couple weeks or a month to do, then or maybe longer than a month to do, you might want to do it per thing. That way, I just don't know though. Because if you do it per month and you don't deliver something every month, people are still being charged. And your fan base will, if they love what you're doing and they love you, they're not going to care though. But it might cause you to have a little bit of guilt, like, and then you feel like, oh, I owe everybody stuff because it's been 2 months and I haven't delivered anything, but they've been paying me, you know. Unless you just put it right up front, like, I might not deliver anything, but you guys can still help me. So there's that. But the per thing was really nice when I did it. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I was when I was doing Citra, I just felt like I was putting too much stuff out there, and I was posting too much content too often and charging too many times a month, and so I felt like that caught people off guard.
How much? And it's just how much were you updating the comic?
I was trying to do it about once a week, and I would post an update every Friday with everything I'd finished that week.
Okay.
And so it's quite a few pages, and I would charge that for that, you know. And then I'd post sometimes in between that, and it would sometimes be sketches, but it just became a lot to manage and handle and assemble and post. And so that was kind of tiring, even though it wasn't a physical product. It was still a lot of work to assemble that every week. You know, it wasn't a lot. I mean, it took me an hour, but it's like at the end of the week, I'm trying to deliver to Webtoons. I'm exhausted, and I'm like, oh, I got to put this thing together for patrons still too, you know? And so it does add up, you know, especially as an artist wearing a million hats. You know, you can't spend 15 minutes wearing each hat because you don't have that time. So just think of it that way. Try to really set it up. And I would probably recommend more of a monthly than a per thing in most cases at this point. But try to set it up so that it's kind of something you're normally doing anyway, and you're just allowing people to support you doing the thing you normally do. And you don't have to invest hours and hours into transcribing or moving things over or creating things specifically for Patreon. Now, there's exceptions because, you know, like what I'm doing this year is kind of that. I'm creating stuff specifically for patrons and Gumroad. And but I've realized that this year I had to do that and make those changes because I I wasn't going to be delivering a comic regularly. So I had to give something. And I couldn't mentally stand the thought of people pledging money to me and me not giving them anything in return just because they love to support me. You know, it's not a donation button. Like I can have a donation button if that's all people want to do, but I look at Patreon more like a subscription. So you're subscribing and you're getting behind the scenes access, or you're getting PDFs of what I'm working on, or you're getting a physical comic when I finish it, or you're getting demo videos of me working on stuff, you know? So, but also, you know, I'm not working a full-time job and then coming home late at night and trying to do a comic and then also trying to do something for Patreon. That's incredibly demanding if you're in that situation. So be very careful with how much time you promise that you're going to give to whatever the things are that you're doing with Patreon. That would be my biggest suggestion.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think we're done. Unless there's anything else you're dying to talk about.
I guess I'll ask more about the Gumroad thing. So, like, what's your long-term plans with like putting products on Gumroad?
You know, it's really an experiment. Gumroad is, and ever since talking to I forget his name. Is it Sahil? What's his name? The guy who started Gumroad. I had that interview with him on my YouTube channel, and ever since talking to him, I just realized it's like I just need to throw a lot of things at it and see what works. And the more things I throw at it, even if it's free things, it just keeps building, because every time I have something new there, I promote it. A wave of people goes and they buy everything else. They don't even buy the new thing. They just buy everything else. And it's just really odd. But then the next time I promote something new, people will go there and they'll buy the last new thing that they didn't buy last time. I don't know. I mean, that's not exactly how it works, but it seems like it. But things like cognitive drawing has been continually selling, and like my textures and my fonts. And so it's really nice because it's kind of, in some cases, equivalent to the amount of money I make through Patreon, but it's just through these one-off digital sales through Gumroad. And so that's why I decided to, while I'm making these demo type of videos or how-to type videos, I will give them to patrons, and then I'll also put it on Gumroad for people who just want to go there and buy the one thing, you know? And it's been working really good doing that. And so that's my strategy for this year with it, is just continue to post, if I can, the same thing on Gumroad as I do Patreon. And I'll try to make it more worth it for people who are patrons, because, you know, they're continuing to support, whereas the Gumroad ones might be a little bit more. And then obviously, you know, the $20 patrons can get a code to have everything on Gumroad for free. So there's advantages to that too. But yeah, that's my thing. And I it's really just experimenting with a lot of stuff. Like I am considering I've been considering this for a while, but I don't know how it would work, but putting like a subscription to a comic on there. So, because I'm fascinated with this idea of a mailing list comic, and I wanted for the longest time to have that be my next one, which would be Phobos, the relaunch of Phobos. And I wanted it to be a mailing list comic where people sign up for a mailing list and then they get delivered like chunks to their email address. And that's the only way to get it, other than if you buy the book at the end once it's all done. But Gumroad seemed like this interesting kind of middle ground where I could have one of the products could be like the subscription to the comic, and people do it with novels on there. Apparently, like they have a novel, they have all their novels. You can buy them one at a time, or you can buy the one they're working on, and it's a membership where you get access to the new chapters every week or whatever as they write them, and then it's sent to you by email. And I just love that idea because it's so much more direct to your audience. You're emailing it to them, and they have to somehow sign up in order to get it. It's not like a website that someone can just go to and get it. And so I don't know. I really like that idea, and I really want to make that work somehow. So I would like to experiment with that in the future. I don't know how it'll work though. And it might not be through Gumroad. It just might be my mailing list service. It might be something else. I have a friend that's working on something that might do the trick. So anyway, but that's the way I look at it. It's very experimental. It's very much a passive income generator. I mean, if there's anything that I'm doing that's passive income, it would probably be Gumroad, because most of that stuff, I didn't make it for Gumroad. I made it for other things, and then I put it on Gumroad, and it just keeps selling, and it's digital. So I don't even think about it. Every week they just send me money, and it's ideal, you know? And so it's hard for me to diss that, because it's really exactly what I've been trying to build all this time. And there's things that I've put a lot of time into in the past to generate passive income, and it makes a couple bucks here and there, and then it slowly fades out. And that kind of stuff isn't worth it. But if you can find something like this to where you're making stuff anyway, you just put it there, you know, like my fonts, like I'm not making these fonts for Gumroad. They're just fonts I've made. And I was like, I'll just sell them, I guess, you know, or my textures, you know, I've had these for 10 years, and like, I guess I'll just sell them, you know, it's like, and they just keep selling. So it's that kind of stuff. It's like, it's so perfect for an artist. And it's exactly what my game plan is. It's accomplishing more than anything else what my game plan was 5 years ago, you know, of building the passive income, you know. So even with books, you know, the books have been good, and they do generate passive income, but there's the problem of like reprinting, and there's the problem of well, you know, so a lot of the money I make, I've been putting into a account for reprinting purposes now, because I don't want to run into that problem again where I sell a bunch of books over the course of 2 years, and I'm like, woohoo, I made a bunch of passive income, and then I ran out of money, and so now let's figure out how to raise money. I mean, I ran out of books, so let's figure out how to raise money for reprinting it so I can continue that passive income. So anyway, I'm kind of going off, but I'm just saying, because Gumroad is digital, and it's like I didn't slave over these products to create them for Gumroad, and the fact that they're making so much passive income with very little effort it's too good to ignore. You know what I'm saying? For me at this stage. There you go. That's what I think. Well, I think I'll end it there, guys. I really appreciate you joining me. I appreciate your support too. And thank you guys for watching online. If you guys watch this, or you're seeing it later. And if you want to be a patron, please join Patreon. Please support somehow, however. And that's it. We'll sign off for the month. See you guys next month.
See you, Jason. Thanks.
Thank you. See you, Derek, Joshua, and